Hello everyone. Today, I will continue the topic of the real structure of the Earth. Despite the huge number of professors, academics, scientists, laureates of various awards, we learn the true picture of the world not from their works, but from inquisitive and caring people who do not have any titles. But there is a sincere desire to understand everything. After all, we still do not get answers to simple questions from science. Let's take elementary oil. Everyone knows what it is. Fuel, black gold, the basis of the foundations of the economy. It is a raw material for all industrial sectors, from heavy to food. Literally everything is made from it, from fuel to alcohol and chewing gum. But if you suddenly want to know where the oil comes from, then no one will give you an exact answer to this question. To date, scientists have not yet come to a consensus on how oil is formed, despite the fact that according to official data, it has been known to mankind for 6,000 years. Can you imagine that for 6,000 years, no one has solved the mystery of the origin of oil? Obviously, it's not the stupidity of scientists, but the fact that the origin of oil, this is classified information, and it is connected with the structure of the Earth. Let's just speculate and ask ourselves questions that science does not give answers to. Well, first of all, oil is oil. In some languages, it is called oil or petroleum, which means rock oil. In German, oil is earth ale, which means ground oil. The question arises, where does the oil come from underground? Even in ground conditions, in order to get it, it is necessary to make efforts, use mechanisms. In nature, in its pure form, it simply does not exist. Any oil, obviously, is a product of production. The second point is why this oil is black, or I would even say dirty, and these are not particles of earth or rock, but some other impurities that made it black. Where did she get so dirty? The question remains open. The third point, oil is a toxic substance. Its rupture is always accompanied by an environmental catastrophe. Why is oil dangerous for the environment? Where did the toxic substances come from? Even such an outstanding scientist as Mendeleev did not dream of an answer to this question. And after all, he, among others, also tried to solve the mystery of the origin of oil, even put forward his own version, but it was never recognized by science as the only true one. The fourth point, there is such a thing as oil fields. In fact, these are storage tanks, reservoirs in which not water, not magma, but oil, exclusively oil, accumulates in some well. Experts call these reservoirs oil reservoirs. I wonder why exactly this word, because sewers are called sewer drains, that is, a specially built place for waste. Let's move on. The fifth point I would like to draw your attention to is that crude oil is not used. It is first subject to processing and purification, and only then this material is used for the manufacture of fuel raw materials or industrial products there. So the question arises, why oil is absolutely unsuitable for use in its raw form? Yes, the question is open. Well, the sixth, last moment, it is no longer hidden from us that oil is a renewable resource. That is, oil reserves are constantly replenished. The big question is, where are the sources? From where? In general, how does oil get into oil reservoirs? Yes, there are many questions. Scientists have been in the dark for 6,000 years, but you and I continue to argue. We add up all the components, and as a result, we get dirty, toxic oil, unsuitable for use in its raw form, which flows from some source into a specially built place for waste and accumulates there. And now, all motorists froze and clearly saw what oil is, without any sciences and academics, who, by the way, also regularly change the oil in their cars. Oil is nothing but used engine oil. Of course, there is no car engine, and judging by its volumes, from some simply huge mechanism, The version of what it is I voiced in my previous video. I will leave the link in the description. This is a rotifer, a hydrotechnical structure of a planetary scale. But the mechanism cannot work forever without lubrication. The rotifer is a colossal machine. After all, the Atlantans were built. There is a lot of oil required there. After the oil fulfills its resource, it changes color to black and becomes toxic, which fully corresponds to the characteristics of oil. And now it becomes clear why oil is not used in its raw form. Yes, because it is used turbine oil, which is first subject to purification processing, just like used engine oil from an automobile engine. First, it is processed, cleaned, and only then used for other engines in machines such as tractors, for example, combines. Waste oil simply cannot be drained into the ground. For example, in Europe, this is very strictly, environmental services prohibit it. For draining oil into the ground, a fine is imposed on a rather large scale, so the waste is stored in specially built waste tanks. In the case of Kolovrat, these are oil reservoirs that will be replenished as long as the turbine is running. And remember how respectable uncles scared us that by the 2020th or some other year, the oil reserves would run out, although they probably knew that oil, like water, has its own cycle, only not in nature, but in a well-built mechanized Atlantic scheme, with oil pipelines, storage facilities, and a processing system. Imagine, our entire economy is based on waste from the operation of a huge hydraulic machine. That is, we are just the personnel servicing the disposal of spent turbine oil. We live in some kind of latrine, I would even say garbage dumps, but surely there are other places, elite platforms, where people are engaged in completely different things, but definitely not the disposal of turbine oil. But you and I got such a destiny to extract, process, and consume waste and exhaust, because the so-called natural gas is nothing but the exhaust from the work of the rotifer. Therefore, there will never be electric cars in the territory that has been allocated for us. There, e-mobiles. There will only be vehicles running on products from oil refining, because there is simply nowhere to put it. And you and I run around like ants and rejoice in the oil fountain and exhaust in the form of gas. We call it natural fossils, although in fact, they are toxic slags that are dumped to us as expendable, useless material. Yes, hard times have come, but just a couple of centuries ago, everything was different. Well, I'll leave it at that. Thank you all for your attention. See you in the following videos.